On February 6, 2018, Steve Wynn departed from the enterprise bearing his name for the final time. He was 76 years of age, possessed a net worth of $3.1 billion, and was credited with transforming Las Vegas from a mere desert settlement into a worldwide hub for entertainment. Just 3 weeks prior, he had been deemed untouchable. Now, he was gone. His downfall transpired over 21 days, while his ascent had taken 50 years. This is the account of how one individual constructed the contemporary Las Vegas and how allegations suppressed for decades brought about his complete undoing in a single night. The celebrated Golden Boy, Stephen Allen Weinberg, entered the world in 1942 in New Haven, Connecticut, amidst a January snowstorm that paralyzed half the city. His father managed a series of bingo halls along the eastern seaboard, not casinos, but rather bingo parlors, modest establishments filled with cigarette haze and elderly women engrossed in their games, clutching their dobbers. Nevertheless, it was a form of gambling, it was lawful, and it funded a comfortable middle-class upbringing in Utica, New York. The family adopted the surname Wynn when Steve was a teenager, a shorter, more accessible, and quintessentially American name, the kind suited for a prominent marquee. Steve displayed early aptitude. He was intelligent, yet not academically driven, charming but strategic. He pursued English literature at the University of Pennsylvania, while his father's bingo enterprise continued its expansion. Then, in 1963, his father succumbed to complications following heart surgery. Steve, at 21 years old and still in college, was unexpectedly thrust into responsibility for the family business. He completed his degree and took the helm of the bingo halls, managing them for 4 years and generating significant profits. However, bingo alone was insufficient. In 1967, he liquidated all assets and relocated westward to Las Vegas with $75,000, his wife Elaine, and aspirations that extended far beyond elderly ladies calling out numbers. Las Vegas in 1967 was a far cry from its future self. The Strip existed, but it remained fundamentally under the control of organized crime. Establishments like the Flamingo, the Sands, and the Desert Inn were not corporate entities. They served as fronts. While these were glamorous fronts, complete with showgirls and performances by Frank Sinatra, they were nonetheless facades. Funds flowed from the casino vaults to discreet counting rooms, and then into briefcases making their way back east. Wynn grasped a critical insight that eluded others. The era of mob dominion was waning. The federal government was intensifying regulatory oversight, and corporations were beginning to perceive gambling not as a vice to be concealed, but as a legitimate business venture. An opportunity arose for someone young, educated, ambitious, and with a clean slate. Someone capable of engaging with bankers and investors without eliciting apprehension. He commenced modestly, acquiring a share in the Frontier Hotel, where he absorbed the intricacies of the business from within, observing the operations of the established figures. His first significant strategic move came in 1971, when he purchased a controlling stake in the Golden Nugget, a modest downtown casino that had seen more prosperous times. The Golden Nugget was unremarkable, featuring 300 rooms, low ceilings, and catering to regular patrons who frequented the nickel slot machines and enjoyed inexpensive drinks. Yet it was his. Wynn harbored grand designs. He undertook renovations, engaged superior entertainment, enhanced the culinary offerings, and elevated the overall standards. Within 3 years, the Golden Nugget was profitable, and within 5, it had become one of the most successful casinos in downtown Las Vegas. Wynn, still in his early 30s, was by then being hailed as a boy wonder. In 1978, he launched a second Golden Nugget in Atlantic City. New Jersey had recently legalized gambling, and Wynn was among the earliest to establish a presence. The Atlantic City property was larger and more ambitious, achieving immediate success. By the early 80s, Steve Wynn owned 2 of the most lucrative casinos in America, amassing wealth far beyond his father's wildest imaginings. However, downtown Las Vegas and Atlantic City were not enough to satisfy his ambitions. Wynn turned his gaze toward the Strip, observing the aging properties with their dated designs and mob affiliations, and perceived a different future. He envisioned a new generation of casino, unlike anything previously constructed. Reinventing the desert was his next frontier. The Mirage opened its doors on November 22, 1989, fundamentally altering the landscape. Wynn had invested $630 million in its construction, making it, at the time, the most expensive casino ever built. The budget had significantly exceeded initial projections, causing investors considerable anxiety, with some questioning his sanity. $600 million for a casino in a desert town seemed financially unsound, incapable of generating sufficient revenue to justify the exorbitant cost. But Wynn was not merely building a casino, he was creating a destination. The Mirage boasted 3,000 rooms, which was standard, but it also featured a volcano. An actual volcano, situated at the forefront, erupted every 15 minutes after dark, sending flames 50 feet into the air. Within the lobby, a tropical rainforest thrived, complete with actual trees, live parrots, and a cascading waterfall. White tigers resided in an enclosure visible from the main casino floor, and the pool area resembled a natural lagoon. Renowned chefs helmed the restaurants, and a Cirque du Soleil production, unprecedented in Las Vegas, captivated audiences. The old Las Vegas paradigm revolved around gambling, drinking, inexpensive buffets, and stage shows featuring topless dancers. The Mirage, conversely, prioritized spectacle, opulence, family appeal, and entertainment that happened to incorporate a casino rather than a casino with ancillary entertainment. Wynn had effectively reversed the established model, and it proved immensely successful. The Mirage generated revenues that proved the initial investor anxieties unfounded, recouping its construction costs ahead of schedule and becoming the most profitable casino in Las Vegas. Overnight, every other casino operator in Nevada scrambled to emulate its success. Within 5 years, the Strip underwent a dramatic transformation. MGM constructed the MGM Grand, then the world's largest hotel, while Circus Circus unveiled the Luxor with its distinctive glass pyramid. Caesars underwent expansion, the Stratosphere Tower ascended, and New York, New York opened with its iconic skyline facade. Each establishment endeavored to outdo the others in terms of spectacle, yet the Mirage had pioneered this new era. Wynn had been the first. In 1993, he unveiled Treasure Island adjacent to the Mirage, featuring a pirate theme with ship battles occurring in front of the casino every 90 minutes. This venture offered more family-oriented entertainment, further redefining the potential of Las Vegas. While successful, it lacked the revolutionary impact of the Mirage. Treasure Island represented refinement rather than groundbreaking innovation. Then, in 1998, came the Bellagio. If the Mirage had established Steve Wynn as a formidable contender, the Bellagio cemented his reputation as an artist. The property cost $1.6 billion and housed 3,600 rooms. It included a gallery dedicated to fine art, a restaurant named Picasso, and a Cirque du Soleil water spectacle. Most famously, it featured the fountains, an 8-acre lake with 1,200 individual water jets choreographed to music, creating a mesmerizing aquatic display visible from Las Vegas Boulevard. The fountains alone accounted for a $40 million expenditure. Wynn adorned the Bellagio gallery with masterpieces from his personal collection, including works by Renoir, Monet, Van Gogh, Cézanne, and Matisse. Art valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars displayed within a casino. This was an audacious and extravagant undertaking, yet brilliant marketing. The implicit message was clear. Las Vegas was no longer a vulgar destination, but a sophisticated and cultured one. One could indulge in gambling, admire world-class art, savor Michelin-quality cuisine, and witness performances of Olympic caliber, all in a single desert location. By the early 2000s, Wynn had divested his casino empire to MGM for $6.6 billion and immediately commenced planning his subsequent venture. Wynn Las Vegas opened in 2005 at a cost of $2.7 billion, followed by Encore next door in 2008, an additional $2.3 billion investment. Each property surpassed its predecessor in luxury and pushed the boundaries of what a casino resort could be. Wynn had transitioned from competing with other casinos to vying with five-star hotels in Paris, London, and Hong Kong, often outperforming them by various metrics. Steve Wynn had become the most influential figure in Las Vegas history. Not necessarily the wealthiest or the most powerful, but undoubtedly the most transformative. He had elevated a city notorious for organized crime and low-cost entertainment into a global destination. He had demonstrated that luxury and gambling could harmoniously coexist, that spectacle could be highly profitable, and that vision was as crucial as capital. His personal fortune mirrored this paradigm shift. By 2017, Steve Wynn's wealth had reached $3.1 billion. He was recognized on the Forbes 400 list, owned residences in Las Vegas, Sun Valley, and Manhattan, and possessed one of America's most esteemed private art collections. He was acquainted with presidents and celebrities, and his name was literally emblazoned on the Strip. From an external perspective, his empire appeared unassailable and continuously expanding. Wynn Resorts Limited's initial public offering in October 2002 generated $700 million, valuing the company at $3 billion. Wynn held the majority of the shares, making him a billionaire several times over on paper, virtually overnight, even as Wynn Las Vegas remained under construction. The IPO funds were earmarked for the completion of what was anticipated to be the most expensive resort ever conceived, with a total cost of $2.7 billion. The structure would feature 45 floors, 2,700 rooms, an 18-hole golf course situated on the Strip, and a Ferrari dealership integrated within the casino. Every detail was meticulously considered, and every surface exuded expense. The property debuted in April 2005 with an exclusive invitation-only opening night, attended by celebrities, high rollers, and journalists. Wynn delivered a speech, having staked his entire reputation and the achievements of the Mirage and Bellagio on the success of Wynn Las Vegas. The project proved triumphant, with first-year revenues exceeding projections. The high-end accommodations maintained consistent occupancy, and the casino attracted affluent gamblers from Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Its restaurants garnered awards, and its nightclub achieved the distinction of being the highest grossing in America. Every performance indicator pointed to unqualified success. Wynn immediately initiated plans for Encore, the adjacent expansion property. This new development was designed to be even more opulent and exclusive, opening in December 2008, precisely at the zenith of the global financial crisis. Despite the calamitous timing, Encore also succeeded. The ultra-wealthy continued their patronage, and the rooms remained largely occupied. Wynn had developed properties catering to a market segment largely insulated from economic downturns. Simultaneously, the company pursued international expansion. Wynn Macau commenced operations in September 2006 within China's sole legal gambling territory. The property, costing $1.2 billion, was smaller than its Las Vegas counterparts, but strategically targeted the rapidly expanding Chinese market for high-stakes gambling. Within 2 years, Wynn Macau was generating more revenue than Wynn Las Vegas, effectively becoming the financial engine of the entire enterprise. Wynn Resorts subsequently opened Encore at Wynn Macau in 2010. Then, in 2016, Wynn Palace opened in Cotai, a staggering $3 billion development. This opulent resort featured a colossal rotating floral sculpture, golden dragons adorning the ceiling, and gondolas transporting guests from the parking area to the casino. It represented an extravagance even by Wynn's standards and proved enormously profitable. By 2017, Wynn Resorts operated 5 properties across 2 countries, employing 25,000 individuals and generating annual revenues exceeding $4 billion. The stock price had appreciated 900% since the IPO. Wynn personally held 12% of the outstanding shares, valued at approximately $4 billion. Revenue generation had shifted significantly towards Macau. At 75 years old, and having dedicated 50 years to the casino industry, he was planning Wynn Boston Harbor, a $2.6 billion property in Massachusetts, slated for a 2019 opening. He was also exploring additional ventures in Japan, which was on the cusp of legalizing casinos. The empire showed no signs of deceleration. It continued its relentless expansion. On January 10, 2018, Wynn Resorts stock closed at $24 per share. Steve Wynn's personal net worth was estimated at $3.1 billion, and the company he had built was valued at $23 billion, a staggering sum. 17 days later, the Wall Street Journal published an article that would dismantle everything. Steve Wynn had meticulously cultivated a public image over 5 decades, portraying himself as a visionary artist with an unparalleled understanding of luxury in the gambling industry. He favored expensive attire, collected art valued in the hundreds of millions, and spoke eloquently about beauty, aesthetics, and the creation of experiences rather than mere profit extraction from patrons. His public persona was carefully managed. While he granted interviews, he controlled the narrative, appearing at ceremonial events and charitable functions, donating to politicians across the political spectrum, and being photographed alongside presidents. His name adorned buildings and graced the pages of business publications. He was universally recognized as Steve Wynn, the man who had revolutionized Las Vegas. However, behind this carefully constructed facade lay a different reality, one that employees whispered about but seldom discussed openly. a reality that the company's legal department had managed for years through millions of dollars in settlement payments and non-disclosure agreements. Warning signs were present had anyone chosen to look closely. In 1998, Wynn Resorts paid a manicurist named Kimberly Keenan $500,000 to settle a lawsuit alleging sexual harassment. The case never proceeded to trial. The settlement included a non-disclosure agreement that Keenan signed, effectively burying the story. In 2005, Wynn Resorts disbursed $1 million to an unnamed employee following allegations of sexual misconduct, again under a non-disclosure agreement, ensuring the story remained hidden. In 2014, Wynn Resorts made another payment of $250,000 to a different employee, following the same pattern: settlement, non-disclosure, and silence. The company's board of directors was aware of some of these settlements, while others were handled discreetly by the legal department. Wynn's personal attorneys were involved in the negotiations. This pattern had been established over years. Allegations would surface, the company would conduct an internal investigation, a settlement would be reached, the employee would sign a non-disclosure agreement, and the matter would be considered closed. Such practices were not uncommon in the corporate world, where companies frequently settled discrimination and harassment claims as a less damaging and more cost-effective alternative to protracted trials. The rationale was straightforward: pay a relatively modest sum to make a problem disappear rather than risk a public trial that could generate negative publicity and potentially lead to a far larger financial judgment. However, the pattern at Wynn Resorts was notable for its consistency and the significant sums involved. Multiple settlements over several years, all pertaining to allegations against the company's founder and chief executive officer, were resolved quietly and concealed behind non-disclosure agreements, leaving Wynn's personal reputation untouched. Profiles in business publications described him as demanding yet brilliant, with interviews often focusing on his art collection and his vision for luxurious entertainment. His relationship with his ex-wife, Elaine, was occasionally mentioned. They had divorced, remarried, and divorced again, but this was framed as personal drama, not professional scandal. The company's image was similarly impeccable. Wynn Resorts received accolades for workplace satisfaction, and its properties were consistently ranked among the top employers in Las Vegas, offering generous benefits and extensive training programs. From an external vantage point, it appeared to be a well-managed organization led by a charismatic figure. Internally, however, some employees harbored different knowledge. Whispers circulated regarding Wynn's conduct towards female employees, tales of inappropriate remarks, massages provided by spa staff that crossed professional boundaries, and the perception of a powerful man who believed his position rendered him immune to consequence. Yet, these whispers held no public sway, as non-disclosure agreements ensured silence and settlement payments secured cooperation. For decades, powerful figures in American corporations had operated under this protective shield of lawyers, financial resources, and systems designed to insulate them from accountability. Then, in October 2017, the New York Times published an article detailing allegations against Harvey Weinstein, a prominent Hollywood producer with a long history of accusations, numerous settlements, and non-disclosure agreements. The parallels to other industries were undeniable. The Weinstein story ignited conversations about power and abuse that had been suppressed for years. Women began to speak publicly about experiences they had previously kept silent, and the hashtag #MeToo evolved into a movement. Industries ranging from film to technology to politics initiated reviews of their internal cultures. The systems that had protected powerful men for decades began to fracture, prompting journalists to scrutinize other influential figures whose public reputations might not align with their private conduct. The accusations detailed in the Wall Street Journal article published on January 27, 2018, titled "Dozens Recount Pattern of Sexual Misconduct" by Las Vegas mogul Steve Wynn, were based on interviews with over 150 individuals. The article meticulously detailed allegations spanning multiple decades, incorporating employee testimonies, legal documents, and settlement records, reflecting extensive sourcing and careful reporting that proved devastating. The report described a pattern of alleged behavior, including pressuring female employees into sexual acts, offering promotions or raises in exchange for sexual favors, and fostering an environment where women working in his spas, salons, or as personal staff felt unable to refuse without jeopardizing their employment. Leveraging his position as CEO and majority shareholder to create a sense of powerlessness. The alleged pattern was described as widespread. One former manicurist recounted being pressured to perform a sexual act while giving Wynn a manicure in his office, feeling trapped and ultimately complying. She received $750 afterward and later confided in colleagues before speaking to the Wall Street Journal. Another employee described being summoned to Wynn's villa at the Wynn Las Vegas property, where he allegedly exposed himself and pressured her into performing oral sex. She reported the incident to her supervisor, leading to an internal company investigation and her subsequent transfer to a different department. She later received a seven-figure settlement payment contingent on signing a non-disclosure agreement described as a settlement of significant size. Multiple former salon employees described a systemic expectation that female workers would be available to Wynn for massages or personal services that extended beyond professional boundaries. Women who declined or raised concerns saw their hours reduced or their positions eliminated, while those who complied were sometimes promoted or received raises. Many reported feeling compelled to accept these demands. The article further detailed the internal mechanisms the company employed to manage these situations. A cadre of executives and lawyers who were aware of Wynn's behavior arranged settlements, managed non-disclosure agreements, and, according to journal sources, facilitated the continuation of this conduct for years by ensuring allegations never surfaced publicly. These internal systems appeared to have fostered an environment of secrecy. The total amount Wynn Resorts had paid in settlements to women accusing Wynn of sexual misconduct was estimated at over $7 million. The earliest documented case dated back to the 1970s, when Wynn still owned the Golden Nugget, while the most recent was from 2015, encompassing 40 years of allegations, dozens of women, and millions in settlement payments, all concealed behind non-disclosure agreements and corporate legal departments. The reported figure of $7 million or more represented a substantial sum. Wynn issued a statement on the same day the article was published, dismissing the allegations as preposterous and attributing them to a campaign by his ex-wife Elaine to damage his reputation during their ongoing divorce proceedings. He vehemently denied ever behaving inappropriately with employees, characterizing the Wall Street Journal article as relying on unreliable sources and containing numerous inaccuracies. He reiterated his belief that the claims were preposterous. The company's board of directors announced they would initiate an investigation, engaging an external law firm to review the allegations. They stated their commitment to taking the matter seriously and fostering a safe workplace, issuing the standard corporate pronouncements typically made when such accusations come to light. Despite the board's assurances of an inquiry, the repercussions were swift and substantial. On January 29th, a mere 2 days after the expose broke, shares of Wynn Resort experienced a 10% decline. The company's market valuation plummeted by $2.2 billion within a single trading day. Mr. Wynn's personal fortune saw a reduction of roughly $400 million in just 48 hours. Institutional investors began demanding explanations. Fund managers holding significant investments in Wynn Resorts sought clarity regarding the board's awareness of the issues and the company's approach to resolving past settlements. They also questioned whether these revelations indicated a wider threat to the company's overall operations. Regulatory bodies in Nevada and Massachusetts initiated their own independent examinations. The Nevada Gaming Control Board, a long-standing licensor of Wynn for many decades, announced a review of the accusations to ascertain Mr. Wynn's continued eligibility for a gaming license. In Massachusetts, where Wynn Resorts was developing the $6 billion Boston Harbor project, officials stated their intent to conduct an investigation prior to determining whether the casino would be permitted to commence operations. Within a week, calls for Mr. Wynn's resignation gained momentum. Investors, political figures, and advocacy organizations asserted his need to step down while investigations were underway, with some advocating for his permanent departure. They argued that the conduct detailed in the Wall Street Journal was fundamentally incompatible with leading a publicly traded entity. Mr. Wynn, however, remained resolute. He reiterated his denials, asserting the falsehood of the accusations and attributing them to his former spouse's attempts to gain an advantage in their divorce proceedings. He vowed to vigorously defend his reputation and stated he would not abandon the enterprise he had dedicated 50 years to building. Nevertheless, on February 6, 2018, 10 days following the Wall Street Journal's publication, Steve Wynn relinquished his positions as Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of Wynn Resorts. The company communicated his exit through a concise press release. Mr. Wynn subsequently issued a statement attributing his departure to an overwhelming surge of negative publicity, which he felt was becoming a detriment to the company. While still refuting the allegations, his tenure had concluded. The resignation was not a voluntary act in any meaningful sense. The board had implicitly conveyed that his position was no longer tenable. Investor pressure was mounting, and regulators were scrutinizing the situation closely. He was presented with a choice: resign or face forced removal. Mr. Wynn elected to resign. In the ensuing months, he divested his entire ownership stake in the company, comprising 12% of Wynn Resorts, valued at approximately $2 billion. This marked the severance of all formal connections to the business bearing his name. His downfall transpired over 21 days, commencing with the Wall Street Journal article on January 27th and culminating in his resignation on February 6th, effectively erasing 5 decades of work in 3 weeks. The immediate financial fallout, though severe, was manageable for an individual with a net worth of $3 billion. Mr. Wynn's wealth diminished from $3.1 billion to roughly $2 billion between January and March of 2018, representing an $800 million loss. For most, this would have been ruinous. For a billionaire, it was a recoverable situation. The legal ramifications, however, proved far more intricate. Multiple investigations were simultaneously launched by the Nevada Gaming Control Board, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, and the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, focusing on whether Wynn Resorts had adequately disclosed the allegations and related settlements to its shareholders. Each of these inquiries carried the potential for significant penalties, including fines, the revocation of licenses, or even criminal charges. The investigation conducted by Massachusetts proved particularly impactful. The state's Gaming Commission dedicated several months to meticulously reviewing documents and interviewing witnesses. In April of 2019, they published their findings, concluding that Wynn Resorts executives had failed to disclose numerous allegations against Steve Wynn during the licensing process, thereby knowingly withholding information crucial to the licensing decision. The penalty imposed was a $35 million fine, the largest in the history of Massachusetts gaming regulation. Critically, however, the Commission permitted Wynn Resorts to retain its license and proceed with the opening of the Boston Harbor property. The company had demonstrated cooperation throughout the investigation, and Mr. Wynn himself was no longer involved. The Commission deemed it inequitable to penalize the company's 25,000 employees for the actions of a former executive. Nevada's investigation followed a comparable trajectory. The Gaming Control Board determined that Mr. Wynn's conduct was inconsistent with the responsibilities of a gaming license holder. However, given Mr. Wynn's prior resignation and sale of his shares, the board levied no sanctions against him. The company itself remained in good standing. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission's investigation concluded in 2020. Wynn Resorts agreed to a $20 million settlement to resolve charges related to its failure to adequately investigate and disclose allegations against Mr. Wynn. As before, there was no admission of wrongdoing. It was solely a settlement agreement that included a commitment to enhance compliance procedures. The divorce proceedings between Steve Wynn and Elaine Wynn, which had been ongoing since 2010, were finalized with a settlement in 2018, the terms of which remain undisclosed. The divorce had been a contentious affair, marked by disputes over stock ownership and control of the company. Elaine Wynn had held 11% of Wynn Resorts and had expressed strong criticism of the board's handling of the allegations against her husband. The settlement presumably encompassed the division of remaining assets and the resolution of outstanding disagreements. Numerous civil lawsuits were filed by former employees, some of which were resolved swiftly, while others protracted for years. Mr. Wynn persisted in denying all allegations, even as his legal team negotiated settlements that obligated him to pay millions in damages. The legal expenses alone likely amounted to tens of millions of dollars. Mr. Wynn's reputation, painstakingly built over 50 years, was irrevocably damaged. The art connoisseur and visionary, who had profoundly reshaped Las Vegas, was now perceived as a disgraced magnate, ousted due to allegations of sexual misconduct. His name was removed from certain industry accolades. Some recipients of his philanthropic contributions quietly returned or redirected the funds, seeking to distance themselves from any association. While the properties continued to bear his name, Wynn Las Vegas, Wynn Macau, Encore, the company initiated rebranding efforts but ultimately retained these designations. The cost of altering every sign, every piece of marketing material, and every reference proved prohibitive. Consequently, the name endured even after the individual's departure. Mr. Wynn withdrew from public life. He retained ownership of properties and immense wealth, but his influence and access evaporated. The capacity to shape industries and forge empires was lost. At 76 years old, possessing wealth beyond measure, he found himself effectively exiled from the world he had meticulously constructed. The company, however, persevered and eventually flourished without him. New leadership assumed control. The board was reconstituted and compliance protocols were enhanced. Revenue continued to ascend and the properties garnered further accolades. Wynn Resorts, as a corporate entity, demonstrated that it no longer required Steve Wynn. This perhaps represented the ultimate indignity. The empire he had built not only survived his departure, but thrived. The company's stock price, which had plummeted in January of 2018, recovered within 2 years and subsequently reached unprecedented highs. Investors concluded that Wynn Resorts without Steve Wynn presented a reduced risk and potentially greater value than with him. His legacy became a complex tapestry. Had Steve Wynn fundamentally transformed Las Vegas? Undeniably. Had he pioneered a novel paradigm for luxury casino resorts? Absolutely. Was he one of the most influential figures in the history of the gaming industry? Without question. Yet these accomplishments were now viewed through the prism of the allegations. The metamorphosis of Las Vegas was accompanied by a somber addendum concerning the man responsible for its transformation. A dark footnote indeed. The aftermath finds Steve Wynn, at 83 years old, residing primarily in Palm Beach, Florida, in a mansion valued at $60 million. His net worth remains approximately $3 billion, notwithstanding the expenditure of hundreds of millions on legal fees, settlements, and divorce-related costs. He has completely withdrawn from public visibility, eschewing magazine profiles and industry speeches. The man who meticulously managed his public image for decades now actively avoids all attention. His art collection, once appraised at over $700 million, has been substantially liquidated, with pieces finding homes with private collectors and at auction houses. The meticulously curated gallery at Bellagio now represents a different individual's legacy. Wynn Resorts continues its operations independently. The company's revenue in 2023 surpassed $6 billion. The properties continue to bear his name. Encore Boston Harbor commenced operations in 2019, weathering the scandal. The empire demonstrated its self-sufficiency, independent of its founder. Mr. Wynn has never publicly acknowledged any wrongdoing, maintaining his consistent stance that the allegations are false and were instigated by his ex-wife as part of a campaign to destroy him. These two realities coexist. He undeniably transformed Las Vegas and revolutionized the casino industry, yet dozens of women accused him of misconduct over a period of 4 decades. The empire endured, but his reputation did not. He retained his financial assets, but lost everything else of true significance.